Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. The garage door rumbled shut behind Ronan Keane's truck. He sat for a moment, breathing in the familiar scent of motor oil and metal that clung to his clothes after a long day at the shop. Tessa would be home from kindergarten by now. The thought of his daughter's smile pulled him from the driver's seat. Ronan moved with the deliberate precision that defined him, each step measured, each movement economical. Old habits from his Marine days. He unlocked the side door and stepped into the kitchen. "Tessa," he called out, and no answer. The house felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. Ronan's senses heightened instantly, the tactical awareness that had kept him alive overseas, now scanning for threats in his own home. "Daddy!" The small voice came from the living room. Relief washed over him as he rounded the corner and found Tessa sitting cross-legged on the carpet, crayon in hand, hunched over a drawing. But the relief evaporated when he saw her face. Her eyes were wide, her small mouth pulled into a tight line. "Hey, kiddo." Ronan knelt beside her, one hand gently touching her shoulder. "Everything okay?" Tessa glanced toward the hallway, then back to her father. She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Mommy said I must never tell you what's in the wall." Ronan kept his expression neutral despite the alarm bells clanging in his head. "What wall, sweetheart?" Tessa pointed a small finger toward the wooden panel behind the couch, a decorative piece from the previous owners that Laurel had insisted on keeping during their renovation. "She put something there when you were at work." Tessa's voice trembled. "She said it was our special secret." Ronan stood, ruffling Tessa's hair. "It's okay. You didn't do anything wrong." He moved the couch aside, examining the panel. It looked undisturbed, but Ronan noticed the screws were slightly misaligned. He retrieved a screwdriver from the kitchen drawer and carefully removed the panel. Inside the wall cavity, nestled among the insulation, sat a small black camera. Ronan recognized the type high definition, motion-activated with remote viewing capabilities. He touched it lightly. Still warm. The camera was positioned to capture his favorite armchair where he sat every evening to read or work, where he and Tessa often reviewed her schoolwork, where he paid bills, reviewed bank statements, made phone calls. "Daddy," Tessa asked, her voice small. "Are you mad?" Ronan turned to his daughter, schooling his features into a calm mask despite the rage simmering beneath. "No, baby. Not at you. Never at you." He replaced the panel carefully, leaving the camera undisturbed. Then he pulled Tessa into a hug. "Where's Mommy now?" She said she had to go to the store. "She told me to stay inside and not answer the door." Ronan nodded, his mind already calculating. "How about we make some dinner? Grilled cheese okay?" Tessa nodded enthusiastically, the tension in her small shoulders easing slightly. As she followed him to the kitchen, Ronan's thoughts raced. He wouldn't confront Laurel. Not yet. The camera meant surveillance, and surveillance meant she was watching him for a reason. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made them both look up. Laurel was home. "Remember, this is our secret for now, okay?" Ronan whispered to Tessa, who nodded solemnly. The front door opened. "Hello, my loves." Laurel's voice rang through the house, bright, cheerful, utterly false. Ronan placed the sandwiches on plates and met his wife's eyes as she entered the kitchen. She was beautiful. She'd always been beautiful with her honey blonde hair and wide green eyes. But now he saw the calculation behind that beauty, the subtle tension in her smile. "How was your day?" he asked, his voice betraying nothing of his discovery. Laurel set down her shopping bags and kissed Tessa on the top of her head. "Oh, the usual HR disasters." She laughed, the sound practiced and hollow. "Everyone wants something, don't they always?" Ronan replied, watching as she opened the refrigerator, her back to him. He wondered how long she'd been watching him, how long she'd been lying, and why. Vince Delgado's basement office smelled of cigarettes and coffee. Computer monitors cast a blue glow over his face as he examined the small camera Ronan had removed from the wall. Standard surveillance. Nothing special, Vince muttered, turning it over in his hands. But this model uploads to a cloud server. "Give me a few hours." Ronan nodded, leaning against the cluttered desk. Vince had been his friend since childhood, the brother he never had. They'd opened Keen Precision together after Ronan's discharge, with Vince handling the technological side of the business while Ronan managed the mechanical. "You think she's cheating?" Vince asked bluntly. "Maybe." Ronan crossed his arms. "But why monitor me? Why not just leave?" Vince tapped his keyboard, eyes scanning code. "Could be custody, building a case. That doesn't feel right." Ronan shook his head. "Tessa said something else. About a camping trip. The one you're planning next month." "Yeah, maybe she's planning to split while you're gone," Vince suggested, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it either. "I need you to dig deeper," Ronan said. "Bank accounts, phone records, everything." Vince's fingers paused over the keyboard. "You sure about this, man? Once we start, I'm sure." While Vince worked his magic on the camera, Ronan drove through the neighborhood. The suburban quiet felt oppressive now, each manicured lawn potentially hiding its own secrets. He parked across from Mrs. Hernandez's house, the retired teacher who watched everything from her front window. She opened the door before he reached the porch. "Ronan, what a surprise." "Morning, Mrs. Hernandez. Sorry to bother you." "Nonsense. Come in for coffee." Her living room was cluttered with books and knickknacks, the furniture worn but clean. She poured coffee into delicate cups that looked too small in Ronan's hands. "I wanted to ask if you've noticed anything unusual around my place lately." Mrs. Hernandez's eyes sharpened. "You having trouble?" "Just being cautious." Tessa mentioned seeing a strange car. The lie came easily, better than explaining about hidden cameras. Mrs. Hernandez nodded thoughtfully. "Now that you mention it, there's been a silver car. One of those fancy electric ones. Tesla, I think." Ronan's cup paused halfway to his mouth. "When?" "Weekdays. When you're at the shop." She adjusted her glasses. "Stays about an hour. Thought it might be a friend of Laurel's. Handsome fellow. Well-dressed." Ronan kept his expression neutral, though his heart hammered in his chest. "Any idea when he was there last?" "Yesterday, actually." Mrs. Hernandez frowned. "Is everything all right, Ronan?" "Everything's fine," he lied. "Just being thorough." When his phone buzzed, Ronan excused himself and stepped onto the porch. "Found something," Vince said without preamble. The footage backs up to a private cloud server. Encrypted but not well enough. Got an email associated with the account. And Clint Maddox, anesthesiologist at Mountain View Surgical. Ronan closed his eyes briefly. A name. He had a name. "There's more," Vince continued. "They've been corresponding for months. Using separate burner emails, but I traced the IP addresses. Send me everything." Back in his truck, Ronan sat motionless, processing. A doctor. A Tesla. Well-dressed. His wife and this man had been watching him, planning something. But what? The answer came that evening, after Laurel had gone to bed. Ronan sat with Tessa, helping her with a new drawing. She'd been unusually quiet at dinner, pushing food around her plate, while Laurel chatted about work. "What are you drawing, sweetheart?" he asked. Tessa's small hands moved carefully over the paper. "Mommy and the man." Ronan's blood ran cold. "What man?" Tessa looked up at him, her eyes solemn. "The man who visits when you're not home. He has shiny shoes." On the paper, two stick figures stood together. The taller one held something in his hand, something long and pointed. "What's it he's holding?" Ronan asked, keeping his voice casual. "A knife. For cutting." Tessa continued coloring. "They said you'd be gone by the camping trip." Ronan stared at the drawing, his daughter's innocent words crashing through him like a physical blow. The camera. The secret meetings. The camping trip. They were planning to kill him. Over the next week, Ronan moved through his life like a ghost, performing the routines of husband and father while waging a silent war. He installed his own surveillance, tiny cameras and light fixtures, a GPS tracker on Laurel's car, monitoring software on their home network. He took samples of their food before eating, checked the locks twice each night, and never turned his back on his wife that ate the garage. He converted the small office into a command center. Vince set up monitors showing feeds from Ronan's house, while they compiled evidence on a bulletin board: photos, receipts, transcripts of conversations. "She withdrew another 10 grand last week," Vince said, tapping a bank statement. "That makes 80,000 over 6 months." Ronan nodded, studying the image of Laurel at the ATM. Where's it going? Working on it. Vince rubbed his eyes. She's using multiple accounts, moving money between them to obscure the trail. And Maddox? Clean record. Too clean. Vince pulled up a profile on his screen. Board certified, specializes in painless procedures. Divorced twice. Lives in that new development on the north side. Drives a silver Tesla. Ronan finished. Yeah. How'd you know? Neighbor saw it. Ronan studied Maddox's professional headshot, handsome, confident, cold eyes. What about phone records? Vince handed him a printout. She's using burners. 3 different ones over the past month. But I managed to access her iCloud backups. He played an audio recording. Laurel's voice filled the small office, unusually tense. If we don't do it by next week, he'll start asking questions. We use the sedative, same dosage as the DEAR protocol. A male voice responded, smooth and confident. I'll bring everything we need. You just make sure he drinks it. And Tessa, she'll be fine. Kids are resilient. Ronan's hands clenched into fists. DEAR protocol, medical terminology maybe? Vince suggested. Maddox works with animals at some rescue center on weekends. Find out more. Ronan stood abruptly. I need to pick up Tessa from school. The kindergarten parking lot was nearly empty when Ronan arrived. He spotted Tessa's teacher, Miss Shaw, walking toward her car. She noticed him and changed direction. Mr. Keene, she called. Good timing. I was hoping to catch you. Inez Shaw was younger than most of the other teachers' late 20s, with dark curly hair pulled back from her face. She had an earnestness about her that Ronan respected. Is Tessa okay? He asked. She's fine. She's with the after-school group. Miss Shaw glanced toward the playground. But I want to talk to you about some of her recent drawings. She pulled a folder from her bag and opened it to reveal several papers covered in Tessa's distinctive artwork. Children process emotions through art. It helps them express things they might not have words for. Ronan looked at the drawings, more images of the man with the knife, a house with dark shadows, stick figures with sad faces. Has there been tension at home? Miss Shaw asked carefully. My wife and I are going through some things, Ronan answered, which wasn't exactly a-l-i-n-s. Shaw nodded, accepting this. Tessa mentioned her mother has been picking her up early some days. Taking her to meet Mom's friend. Ronan's jaw tightened. How often? Twice this week. She hesitated. I noticed a friend waiting in a silver car. I wouldn't normally mention it, but Tessa seemed afraid of him. Miss Shaw met his eyes directly. And he wasn't on your approved pickup list. Ronan took a slow breath. I appreciate you telling me this. Mr. Keene, she touched his arm lightly. If you need help, there are resources. We'll be fine. He interrupted, more sharply than intended. Then, softening his tone, thank you for looking out for Tessa. As he walked toward the playground, Ronan's phone buzzed with a text from Vince. Found property records. Call me. Tessa's face lit up when she saw him. She ran across the wood chips, backpack bouncing. Daddy, you came early. He swept her up, breathing in the scent of crayons and apple juice. Thought we could have some daddy-daughter time. How's that sound? Her small arms tightened around his neck. Can we get ice cream? Absolutely. Over rainbow sprinkles and chocolate sauce. Ronan watched his daughter carefully. Tessa, has Mommy been taking you to meet her friends sometimes? Tessa looked down at her ice cream. We're not supposed to talk about him. I know, but it's okay to tell me. She nodded slowly. He has a big house with a pool. Mommy says we might live there someday. What do you think about that? I don't want to. Her lower lip trembled. He smiles funny, not with his eyes. Ronan reached across the table, gently squeezing her hand. You won't have to, sweetheart. I promise. That night, after Tessa was asleep, Ronan sat in his workshop in the garage. The call with Vince had confirmed his suspicions Laurel and Maddox had purchased property together, a remote cabin near Cripple Creek, using shell companies to hide their identities. They'd been planning this for months. He was examining the deed when headlights swept across the driveway. An unfamiliar car parked at the curb, a rental, based on the sticker in the window. A woman emerged, her silhouette achingly familiar despite the years. Juno Keene. Ronan stepped onto the driveway, watching his mother approach. She'd aged well, still elegant at 64. Her silver hair cut in a sharp bob, her posture military straight. She stopped a few feet away, uncertainty crossing her face. "Hello, Ronan. Why are you here?" he asked, his voice flat. "May I come in?" When he didn't respond, she sighed. "Please, it's important." He led her to the kitchen, where they sat across from each other at the table. 26 years since she'd walked out. 26 years of silence. "You look well," she said. "Cut the small talk." Ronan crossed his arms. "What do you want?" Juno's expression hardened into something more familiar, the strategic mind that had always calculated 3 moves ahead. "I heard something concerning. About Clint Maddox." Ronan kept his face impassive. "Who? Don't play dumb, Ronan. It doesn't suit you." She leaned forward. "He's being investigated for misuse of sedatives at his clinic. Controlled substances missing from inventory. And this concerns me how? Because he's been seen with your wife." Juno held his gaze. "And I know that look in your eyes. It's the same one your father had before he went to prison." The mention of his father struck like a hammer blow. Frank Keene had spent 5 years behind bars for nearly beating a man to death, his mother's lover. The reason she'd left. "My marriage is none of your business," Ronan said coldly. "Listen to me." Juno's voice took on an urgency he hadn't heard before. "Whatever you're planning, don't. There are better ways. Like running away." The bitterness escaped before he could stop it. Juno flinched. "I deserve that. But I'm trying to prevent you from making the same mistakes." "Why now? After all these years?" She looked down at her hands, the first sign of vulnerability. "I have contacts in medical licensing. When Maddox's name came up linked to missing drugs, I did some digging. Found out about the property in Cripple Creek." She met his eyes again. "And the life insurance policy." Ronan went still. "What policy?" $500,000. "On your life." Juno pulled a folder from her bag, sliding it across the table. "Taken out 3 months ago. Your signature's on it, but I doubt you signed it." Ronan opened the folder. There was his name, his forged signature, Laurel as the sole beneficiary. Payable upon accidental death. "She's been planning this for a while," Juno said quietly. "And Ronan, she's not acting alone." "I know." He closed the folder. "Why do you care?" "Because you're my son." Her voice broke slightly. "And because I know what happens when revenge becomes your purpose. It destroyed your father. I won't let it destroy you too." Ronan stood, ending the conversation. "It's late. You should go. At least think about what I've said." Juno rose, leaving a business card on the table. "My number, if you need me." After she left, Ronan returned to the garage, adding the insurance policy to his growing collection of evidence. His mother's words echoed in his mind, but he pushed them aside. This wasn't about revenge. This was about protection for himself and for Tessa. The next morning, Vince arrived with more news. Got into Maddox's medical records. The Deer Protocol is a sedative cocktail used for large mammals. Fast-acting, leaves the system quickly. Untraceable. Ronan asked. "Not if you know what to look for." Vince handed him a small device. "I modified this to detect the compounds. Run it over food or drinks before consuming." Ronan pocketed the device. "What about the cabin?" "Remote. No neighbors for at least a mile." Vince pulled up satellite images. One wrote in. "Cell service is spotty. Perfect place to stage an accident." Ronan nodded slowly, a plan forming. "I need you to get me inside. Cameras, audio, the works. Breaking and entering now." Vince raised an eyebrow. "That's a felony. So is attempted murder." Ronan's voice was steel. "Can you do it?" "You know I can. But are you sure this is the play? We could go to the police with what we have. And say what? That my wife is talking about sedatives with her doctor boyfriend? That I found a camera?" Ronan shook his head. "We need them to make a move. To commit." Vince looked troubled. "This is dangerous territory, man. I've been in dangerous territory before." Ronan checked his watch. "I need to meet with Tessa's teacher. Set things up at the cabin and call me when it's done." Miss Shaw Inez was waiting for him in her classroom. The children were at recess, giving them privacy to talk. "Thank you for coming," she said, offering him coffee from a thermos. "I've been worried about Tessa. Has something else happened?" Ronan asked, declining the coffee. "She made this yesterday." Inez handed him a drawing, a house near water, stick figures inside. "She said it's where mommy's taking her after you're gone." Ronan studied the crude depiction of the cabin. Did she say anything else? That her mother has been practicing. Inez hesitated. Practicing what, I don't know. But she seemed frightened. I appreciate you watching out for her. Ronan's voice softened. Not many would get involved. Inez's expression turned fierce. I grew up in the system, Mr. Keene. 7 foster homes. I know what it's like when adults who should protect you don't. The admission surprised him. Her file had listed an education degree from Colorado State. Glowing recommendations, nothing about foster care. Call me Ronan, he said. And thank you. She nodded, her professional demeanor returning. What can I do to help? Keep Tessa safe during school hours. Don't let anyone pick her up without checking with me. First, even my wife. He met her eyes. Things might get complicated soon. I understand. She didn't ask questions, just accepted the gravity of his request. She'll be safe here. That evening, Ronan set his trap. Laurel was preparing dinner when he entered the kitchen, moving behind her to kiss her cheek, a performance he'd perfected over the recent days. I've been thinking, he said, leaning against the counter. We need a break. Just the two of us. She turned, surprise flashing across her face. What about Tessa? My friend Mike could watch her for a weekend. The lie came easily. I found this great cabin rental near Cripple Creek. Secluded. Romantic. Laurel's eyes widened slightly alarm or excitement. He couldn't tell. When were you thinking? This weekend. Ronan watched her carefully. Unless that's too soon. No, she said quickly. This weekend is perfect. Later, Ronan listened as she made a call from the bathroom, water running to mask her voice. He couldn't hear the words, but he knew who was on the other end. The pieces were falling into place. Vince confirmed the cabin was ready, wired with cameras and microphones, every angle covered. Whatever happens there, we'll have it on record. Ronan nodded, checking the small bottle of saline solution in his pocket, identical to the sedative Maddox would provide, ready for the switch. And Tessa, my sister's expecting her. She'll be safe. As Ronan packed for the trip, Tessa watched from his doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. Do you have to go? She asked in a small voice. Ronan knelt to her level. Just for 2 days, kiddo, and then things will be better. I promise. He hugged her tightly, praying it was a promise he could keep. The cabin looked exactly as it had in the satellite images. Rustic, isolated, with a small deck overlooking a stand of pines and distant mountains. Perfect for a romantic getaway. Perfect for staging an accident. Laurel moved around the space with nervous energy, unpacking groceries and examining the rooms while Ronan brought in the luggage. She'd been unusually quiet during the drive, checking her phone repeatedly. No service, Ronan commented, setting their bags in the bedroom. Guess we're really disconnected. There's Wi-Fi. She replied quickly, then caught herself. I mean, the listing mentioned Wi-Fi. Let's unplug completely. He approached her, hands on her shoulders. Just us. Like the old days. Something flickered in her eyes, hesitation, perhaps regret. For a moment, he glimpsed the woman he'd married, the woman who'd once held their newborn daughter with tears of joy, who'd supported him through nightmares and adjustment after his service. That woman was gone now, replaced by a stranger wearing her face. I'll make dinner, she said, slipping away from his touch. Ronan watched her move around the kitchen, noting how she positioned herself to keep him in view. He pretended not to notice, playing the role of unsuspecting husband pouring wine, making conversation about safe topics. All the while, he was hyper-aware of the small device in his pocket, waiting for the moment that tea came after dinner. Laurel suggested a nightcap by the fireplace, whiskey for him, wine for her. When she went to the bathroom, Ronan quickly passed the detector over his glass. It lit up instantly. The sedative was already in the drink. With practiced sleight of hand, he emptied the glass into a potted plant and filled it with water from his bottle. When Laurel returned, he raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, he said. She clinked her glass against his, watching intently as he drank. To new beginnings. For the next hour, Ronan carefully mimicked increasing drowsiness, slurred words, heavy eyelids, slumped posture. Laurel grew more alert, checking her watch, texting quickly when she thought he wasn't looking. I think, he mumbled, I need to lie down. She helped him to the bedroom, solicitous and concerned. You're really out of it. Must be the altitude and alcohol. He agreed, allowing himself to fall heavily onto the bed. Stay with me. I'll be right back, she promised, pulling a blanket over him. Ronan closed his eyes, listening as she moved around the cabin. The front door opened and closed. Voices outside, too low to hear. Then footsteps on the deck, the door opening again. 2 sets of footsteps now. Is he out? A male voice, smooth, confident. Maddox. Completely. Laurel's voice held a note of triumph. The dose worked perfectly. Let me check. Footsteps approached the bedroom. Ronan kept his breathing deep and regular as a figure leaned over him. Cold fingers pressed against his neck, checking his pulse. Good. Maddox sounded pleased. Help me get him to the car. What about the note? Laurel asked. Already printed. Suicide note, depression, financial troubles, the usual. Ronan felt hands gripping his arms, beginning to drag him from the bed. He let them move him partially before making his move. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Maddox's wrist and twisted, using the man's momentum to throw him off balance. Maddox stumbled backward with a shout of surprise as Ronan rose to his feet. You're not even creative, Ronan said, his voice deadly calm. Laurel screamed, backing away. Ronan, what? Shut up. He didn't look at her, keeping his focus on Maddox, who was regaining his balance. Both of you, living room. Now. Maddox's hand moved toward his pocket. Ronan stepped forward, stopping him with a hand around his throat. Whatever you're reaching for, don't. He applied just enough pressure to make breathing difficult. Move. In the living room, Ronan directed them to sit on the couch. Laurel was trembling, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Maddox maintained his composure, though his eyes darted around, calculating escape routes. How long? Ronan asked, standing before them. How long have you been planning to kill me? Silence. Answer me. His voice cracked like a whip. 6 months, Laurel admitted, her voice small. Since January. Ronan nodded, unsurprised. And Tessa? What was your plan for her? She would have been fine, Maddox said smoothly. Children adapt. Don't. Ronan cut him off. Don't pretend you care about my daughter. He pulled out his phone, activating the recording app. Now you're going to tell me everything. From the beginning. Laurel looked at Maddox, who gave a slight nod. We met at a medical conference, she began. I was representing our company. He was a speaker, and you decided I needed to die. Ronan's tone was conversational, belying the rage beneath. It wasn't like that at first. Laurel's words came faster now. We were just talking, flirting. Then it became more. You were so distant, she continued, accusation creeping into her voice. Always at the garage, or with Tessa. Never with me. So you put a camera in our wall. Her eyes widened. You knew. I know everything. Ronan pulled out his tablet, displaying images, bank withdrawals, property deeds, the life insurance policy. The money. The cabin. The insurance fraud. We can explain. Maddox began. Save it for the police. Ronan turned back to Laurel. When did it change from an affair to murder? She looked away. Clint said a divorce would be messy. You'd fight for custody. Take everything. He was right about that. Ronan agreed coldly. Maddox suddenly lunged forward, reaching inside his jacket. Ronan was faster, sidestepping and driving his elbow into Maddox's solar plexus. The doctor collapsed, gasping for breath. A syringe clattered to the floor. Amateur, Ronan muttered, kicking the syringe away. He pulled zip ties from his pocket, securing Maddox's hand behind his back. Laurel screamed, a sound of pure fury rather than fear. She launched herself at Ronan, nails aimed at his eyes. He caught her wrists, holding her at arm's length as she thrashed. You ruined everything, she spat. We could have been happy. By killing me, Ronan asked quietly. By traumatizing our daughter, you never understood what I needed. Tears streamed down her face. A partner, not a robotic perfectionist who judges everything. Ronan felt nothing, no anger, no hurt, just hollow confirmation of what he already knew. He secured her wrists with another zip tie, then stepped back. I'm leaving now, he said calmly. The evidence has already been sent to the police. They should be here within the hour. You can't do this, Maddox groaned from the floor. I already have. Ronan collected his bag. You'll be charged with attempted murder, drug trafficking, insurance fraud. The list goes on. He turned to Laurel one last time, and you'll never see Tessa again. The drive back to Colorado Springs was long and quiet. Ronan's phone buzzed repeatedly with calls from the local sheriff confirming the arrests, from Vince checking his status, from his mother offering support. He ignored them all, focusing on the road, on breathing, on the vast empty space where his marriage had been. By morning, the machinery of justice was in motion. Ronan gave his statement at the station, handed over the recordings, the financial records, the insurance documents. Detective Martinez looked increasingly grim as the evidence mounted. We've also found controlled substances in Dr. Maddox's vehicle, she informed him, and a forged suicide note with your signature. Ronan nodded, unsurprised. Your wife is claiming you were abusive. Martinez continued, watching his reaction. Says she was afraid for her life. Check with my daughter's teacher, Ronan replied. Inez Shaw. She has documentation of concerning behavior. The preliminary hearing came quickly. Ronan sat in the courtroom, watching as Laurel entered in handcuffs, her attorney whispering urgently in her ear. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes replaced by a modest suit that somehow made her look smaller, diminished. She didn't look at him. Vince testified about the surveillance equipment, the digital trail of planning. Inez spoke about Tessa's drawings, the unauthorized pickups, the child's fear. Even Juno appeared, reluctantly confirming she'd discovered the insurance policy through her industry contacts. When Tessa's recorded testimony was played, her small voice describing Mommy's secret friend and the medicine to make Daddy sleep, Laurel broke down, sobbing in her hands. The judge was unswayed. Bail is denied for both defendants. This court finds sufficient evidence to proceed to trial on all charges. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Ronan brushed past them, finding Juno waiting by his truck. It's over, she said simply. No, the trial is just beginning. I meant the danger. She hesitated. Have you thought about what happens after? For you and Tessa? Ronan looked at his mother, really looked at her for the first time since her return. The regret in her eyes was genuine, the concern real. We'll manage, he said, less harshly than before. You don't have to do it alone. She touched his arm lightly. I know I have no right to ask for a second chance. You don't, he agreed. But Tessa might need a grandmother. It wasn't forgiveness. Ronan didn't believe in second chances, but it was something. An acknowledgement, perhaps, that family took strange forms. Sometimes 2 months later, Ronan stood in the empty house, watching as movers carried the last boxes to the truck. The sale had gone through quickly. No one wanted to stay in a home filled with such betrayal. He found a new place outside town, a small ranch with views of the mountains, room for Tessa to play, space for him to breathe. Inez had helped with the search, her practical nature cutting through real estate agents' sales pitches. She'd become a friend during the chaos, maybe something more, someday, when the wounds weren't so fresh. Tessa ran through the emptied rooms, her footsteps echoing. Is our new house ready? Already, Ronan confirmed. Your room has that mural you wanted. The phoenix. Her eyes lit up, rising from the fire. He knelt to her level. Time to say goodbye to this house. She looked around thoughtfully, then slipped her small hand into his. I'm not sad, Daddy. No, this was the quiet house. She said it matter-of-factly. I like houses with talking better. Out of the mouths of babes. Ronan realized she was right. This place had been full of silence, of secrets, of things unsaid. The new house will be different. Honest. Opened at AS, they stepped onto the porch for the last time. Tessa looked up at him with solemn eyes. Are the bad guys gone, Daddy? Ronan knelt, looking her in the eyes. No, they just met someone worse. Someone who would do anything to protect what mattered. Someone who knew that family wasn't just blood, but choice. Someone who had learned, finally, to recognize the shadows in the suburbs and the quiet dangers of ordinary life. He took his daughter's hand, and together they walked toward the future, leaving the quiet house behind.